Hello guys, my name is Marc from jazzguitarlessons.net. Improve your jazz guitar playing with a real teacher, the blue shirt and the blue guitar guy, that's me. And welcome to this intervals lesson, called this Intervals 101 if you will. I just want to direct you right away to the resource, which is the blog post associated with this video, on which you'll have the sheet music you can download, as well as the timestamp. So you can also see the description below where you have stamps for sort of the chapters in this video, because we want to address a few key points. So in brief, what we'll be talking about today, number one is what are the intervals? What are they? And they're a measure of distance between notes. And then we'll talk about why intervals are useful, especially for jazz musicians. And then we'll proceed with a demonstration of basic intervals to help you recognize them, recognize them by ear. And after that, we'll discuss how these intervals are actually the foundation for building different chords, because that's how we measure distance between notes within chords that have more notes. Then we'll go on to discussing chord progression, chord sequences, and how intervals are used to identify chord sequences. And lastly, and that's maybe for the most advanced people, have a chord melody arrangement using a simple interval of a fourth throughout the piece that allows you to imply all the chords within the sequence and actually play the melody. This is Beautiful Love, and that will come probably last within the video. So without further ado, let's get going with part one of this video. All right, part one of this video. What is an interval? So a concise and accurate definition of it would be it's a distance, the measure of a distance between two notes. So if I take a note here, a note there, and I go, what's the distance? Like, this is 8 inches and a quarter, or this is 5 centimeters. So if you look at the fretboard, guitarists were pretty lucky, because you pick any note and you go here and go, if I go higher up, you can count this distance in half steps. And actually what we do in terms of classical music, because that comes from our classical world of the European music, we don't just say, oh, this is 7 half steps. We don't really use this notation. We will use a way of identifying intervals that is musical, so we can really identify it by ear. So it's not like a scientist thing, take your measure tape, look, this is the distance. But all in all, that's all an interval is. So keep that in mind as you encounter theory, as you encounter how different chords are built, as you encounter the rest of the stuff in this video. Intervals are simply a measure of distance. All right, part two of this video, I wanted to spend a little moment to tell you how this can be useful to your guitar playing. First and foremost, it goes without saying, understanding the theory of things that come your way, scales, licks, chords and progressions. It will become second nature, because if you rely a lot on the visual aspect of the guitar, some things at a certain point will stop making sense if you don't really understand intervallic structure. So that's number one for me, is like, well, you can start to understand what's happening. Or if you do understand but you have some gaps, then knowing intervals will really help you. Secondly, it really helps you with your ears, meaning that when you play a note, any note within an improvised solo, or if you're playing, comping or walking bass or a standard or blues or rock, whatever you play, there's always a next note. And that next note is always at a certain distance from the previous one, right? So knowing this will help you hear what you're doing, because the next note is either up a certain interval or down a certain interval. And understanding this and hearing this will really help you, especially in terms of jazz. I'm a jazz guy. It's a Jazz Guitar Lessons on that channel, right? It's really come in handy when you want to improvise and make sense of your lines. Also, when you transcribe solos, when you hear a line by someone, you can sort of write it out or sort of figure it out on your fretboard and go, oh, he's going up, he's going up a fourth and doing this and doing that. You can start to recognize patterns. I remember transcribing the Kenny Burrell solo on Freight Train, right after Coltrane solos, and Kenny does something all in fourths. And once you understand that structure, like, oh, he's climbing in fourths within the scale of whatever it was, A flat major. So that really comes in handy to understand and retain transcribed solos. And lastly, I think I've already told you this, but understanding the theory of chord structures will allow you to go a bit deeper especially when you get into these strange structures like upper structures, triads, and quartal, you know, the so what voicings type of, you know, these sort of things. It will allow you to gain clarity and not just always think in terms of fingers and visual on the fretboard. So that's why intervals are important. Now let's jump into the demonstration. All right, let's jump in the demonstration, which is part 3 of this video. Before I jump in, I just want to tell you that this is personal, if you will. There's a list on the blog, by the way, and you can see the fingerings and etc. And I won't necessarily use the same fingerings. I might sing a little bit, you know, just go crazy. You know me, guys. And the point of this is you need to pick songs that you know you can recognize the beginning intervals by ear, and they might be different than my songs that I picked. And I have these little tricks I will share with you. In any case, you can see the blog to really find fingerings on the guitar with tabs. But now let's jump in. We will cover all intervals between the unison, which is you play a note, then you play the same note at the same height. There's no, like there's nothing to it. You play a C here, you play a C here, so play the C and the C. That's the first interval. And all the way after 12 intervals, you have the C and then the C up there. And that's called an octave. So unisons, between unisons and octaves, there's 11 more that we, 11 more that we need to cover. So between C and D flat, between C and D, between C and E flat, or D sharp, between C and etc. But each one of those, they have a flavor. So let's jump in. So I already told you about unisons. C, C, long fingers. And then let's talk about the minor. We call this a minor second. Why a second? Because we say from C to D is a second. The interval of a second, the distance of a second. And D is flat, so C, D flat. It's called a minor second. And a minor second reminds me a lot of Jaws. You know the movie Jaws with the big shark? Mm-hmm. You know the drill anyway, so whenever I hear two notes, two consecutive notes, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is a half step, this is Jaws, this is a minor second. Let's keep going. Major second now would be in between C and D. And my trick for this is pretty obvious. You're gonna go, yeah, you know, it's starting slow. Bear with me. So C major, and you climb up the scale. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do, re, do, re, do. That's the interval. Yeah, also I recommend singing those. If you're not sure, if I played you a note or sang you a note, you need to be able to sort of intuit, even if you're a bad singer. I'm not a really good singer. At least intuit what the next interval is right in your mind. Now we have a minor third, of course. So if you start with a C note and you go here, C to A flat, E flat, and I'm Canadian, even though there's no red in this picture in the video. O Canada, O Ca. So for me, O Canada, our national anthem, is actually, is it an anthem? Yeah, I think it's an anthem. There's a different name for it, I think, but anyways. Check it out, Calixa La Vallée, who wrote that song a while back. So O Canada is my song. Other people will go, well, I hear a minor triad. I hear C minor. That's also fine. Major third. That's an easy one. You have a C, and you go C, D, E. So, have yourself a merry little Christmas. That's mine. Have yourself. People will say, yeah, it's just a major arpeggio, C, E, G. That also works. So far we have unison, minor second, minor third, major third. And now we're going to go to fourths and fifths. The thing, and I don't want to get in the theory of it. If you do want to get the theory of it, go for a classical conservatory book, or we have a course on the website called Harmony 101. It's part of the subscription package, so that's where you can really learn why certain intervals are minor and major and other intervals are perfect and diminished. So that's a story for another time, but fourths and fifths are either perfect, diminished, or augmented. And my song for perfect fourth, so from C to F, is All the Things You Are. you are, da, da, da. Other people also have this as a dominant tonic, like a 5-1, Roman 5 to 1. Ma, da, da, da. That's a perfect fourth up. Next one, little another Canadian wink. You know the band, the sort of prog rock band Rush? So there's a song called YYZ. I don't think I have that right, but anyways, C F. It's a pretty interesting interval to cover because it's in between a fourth and a fifth. Now let's go to the perfect fifth. So Star Wars. Also, for you 80s kids, Top Gun theme. Flying a plane, crashing. Okay. Next one, after we covered from C to G, we have from C to A flat or G sharp if you want. And this interval is not it's an augmented fifth if you want, but it's also deemed as a minor sixth. And that minor sixth, personally, I like to hear it as, I forgot the tune name. Where's my notes? Oh yeah, Black Orpheus. Mo da 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 do de do de da 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 da. You know, so this is my song. We have to be mindful too because we're going through all these songs and ears will trip you up on context. So I played you O Canada earlier for my minor third. But O Canada is not in minor, it's a major song. O Canada, it's an A flat, but the first note is C. So you have to be mindful of your ears will try to trick you to tell you O Canada is a major third, but it's a minor third going up. All right, so we have our minor sixth with Black Orpheus. Then we have our major sixth, which is one of my favorite songs ever, Days of Wine and Roses. The days of wine and roses, the days. Now we're going to get into the really difficult ones. The next interval is, of course, a minor 7, so from C to B flat. And I'm sure there's tons of people watching that are Trekkies, so this is, I've never really watched Star Trek a lot, but I know this is the beginning. And also people hear this as a bluesy interval, so you can play C, E, G, and B flat. And I think there's the Beatles, the Twist and Shout song, right? And they go just before the end. So that's another way to hear it. And we have two more to cover. We have the major 7th, so between C and B natural. And there's probably songs that I've heard that use that interval, but none really came to mind. So my trick is to go Do, Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Si, Do. I reach the next Do, the next C, Do, 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 and go down a half step. So it's really pulling, right? And last one to finish off this third section. And sorry, it took a little while, right? It took a while to go through all the possibilities. We will cover the octave. And octave, do, do, is, well, pick on the ground. Man down. Somewhere over the rainbow. Somewhere over the rainbow. So once again, those are my songs, and you can find them on the blog. But what I encourage you to do is, number one, find your own songs that you have right in your mind that you know you're familiar with. Jazz, rock, blues, pop, doesn't matter. Nursery rhymes, like, it doesn't matter at all. One thing is you should be able to have someone play you a note, and without an instrument, be able to sing the interval. And now this is 101, and this is not interval 102 and 103, but actually you should be able to also do that descending. So we talked about ascending intervals, but remember, if someone gave you a pitch, you should be able to sing minor 7th down from this, or to hear it, or if someone played it to you, you go Oh yeah, that's what it is. And final note before wrapping up this section is there's countless of things that you can use, tools, phone apps. I hate it when my students bring their phone. They're not practicing, they're on their phones. But Abersold has published a book probably in the 70s or 80s. It's one of his play-alongs, but it's called Ear Training. So it's good because he like quizzes you on intervals and chord types. You know, is this a major or minor chord? There's apps, there's a website, I was doing alright.com. There's an ear trainer there. There's countless of really cool ear trainers out there. The only thing to keep in mind is ensure you can do this by ear and that you're getting better at hearing this stuff, right? That you are like, oh, you know, last week I couldn't really hear a minor seventh and I sort of hear it ascending. All right, so let's move on to the next section. All right, for part 4 of this video, I want to discuss how actually intervals constitute the foundation of different chords. The foundations, should I say. It's foundational because chords are built of many notes, and the distance between any of the two notes is always, you can calculate it from an interval. And particularly, one thing you can do is you can check out the blog here and go C major 7, you know, garden variety. And without barring, not the top, no, I'm just playing 4 notes here. So C, G, B, and E. What is particularly important in that case is that you have in mind the distance, the interval between the root and each other note. So this is root 5th, power chord, right? And then you have root 7th, so C, C, B, and then the last one is, it's an E. So E is actually the 3rd note of the scale. So this is a major third, but doubled. So we will call this a 10th, typically. Even if it sounds wrong when I say it, it's something. This is something. So number one, you have this distance in between the root and the other notes of your chord that you can sort of identify and sing. But what I want to show you, and you can refer to the blog, number one, that chord is C major 7, and it constitutes, the notes are C, E, G, and B. And look how, this is not in the blog, but C, E, G, and B, so open G and open B, it feels different than, and that's because the intervals have a different harmonic meaning when they're played together. If you leave a space somewhere in the voicing, it will sort of create a different sort of mood. So what I did on the blog, there's 2 examples. Example 1 is this guy, and example 2 is the one everyone hates me for, which is first inversion C major 7 chord. I recommend you practice this voicing because it's a really cool jazz major 7 voicing that's super useful. So we play the E note and the B with your 2nd and 4th finger, and then you play C and G here. So you see, this 5th is here. And we took E and B, so essentially this is a 5th, and this is a 5th. And when you combine them, you're playing 2 5ths, but you're still spelling the same 4 notes, C, E, G, B, but now the order is E, B, C, and G. The second one, that one is crunchier because of that. While in the other voicing, we sort of avoided it. We had C and B here, but now we're going, no. Let's have B and have C above. So it's like, you know. So I just wanted to take a moment to show you this has a different intervallic structure. And see, I just went really fast with you, like analyze. This is a 5th, this is another 5th, and then this is a minor 2nd. This is a Jaws. What else did I want to mention? Yes, so some chords like this will be inverted or voiced in a certain way that makes them not very useful because you play them and everyone goes, ugh, is this C major 7? Like this one particularly. This one I don't like. It's correct in theory, so it's C on top, G, and E and B, but it goes, I don't really like that. Unless it's used by, I don't know, Bill Frisell or whatever, and then they play it and it sounds nice. But this is not a really key voicing, and typically people will add a D here and go like, because it sounds much better. So the word here is find what works, find what you think sounds nice, and don't treat any or all inversions of chords all the same, because the intervallic structure that now you have the tools to analyze, it changes and it will give a different feel to the chord voicing in question, the chord that you're playing. It feels different according to how you put the notes in. So this is amongst the principle of orchestration, you know, saying the classical orchestra, of course it's an F major chord, but then depending on who plays what, okay, second violin gets this and the tuba gets this, whatever, it will bring a different feeling, and we're human and we vibrate at different frequencies, so that's just something you have to keep in mind when you're learning jazz voicings. That's all I have for chord constructions. There's way more there, but you can find a good theory book or go to the jazzguitarlessons.net theory page, and let's move on to the next section. Alright, so welcome to part 5 of this Intervals 101 video, and here I want to discuss chord progression, so chord sequences. What is interesting is not all, but you've heard that a lot of jazz standards operate according to the cycle of fourths. And what's interesting is you can describe, first and foremost, before I jump the gun, you can describe chord progressions as intervals, regardless of what they are. If you play a C chord here, and then your next chord is an E chord, you say C, D, E, all right, my next chord was a third up. So right there, intervals are used not only to tell you the distance between notes within a chord or between notes in a melody, but also between the root note of two chords that come one after another, the chord sequence. Furthermore, you can base an entire chord progression on one interval. And I'll give you an example, and everyone's go, if you've never dealt with intervals, that's going to be like, yes, of course. So let's take a 2-5-1 in the key of C major. So D minor 7. By the way, my pick is still on the ground from earlier. That's crazy. Let's grab another one. Fresh one. I eat those for breakfast. It's incredible. D minor 7, to G7, to C major 7. And here, let's just get rid of everything and just play the root. D, to G, to C. And let's make it so that we're always ascending. So D, to G, to C. Now you're beginning to look at this and go, all right, so D, E, F, G, 4, G, A, B, C, 4, So essentially the 2-5-1, the minor 2, dominant 5, whatever, it's all in C major, and it's ascending fourths. It's ascending the cycle of fourths. Or people will say it's descending the cycle of fifths. If you want to do it that way, that's also fine. Take a D note here, go down a fifth to G, go down a fifth to C. So you see that the entire progression itself is summarized by one interval. Of course, you have to adjust the notes, like the D is a minor 7 because it contains the notes X, Y, Z, and you have to do that legwork, but you can describe the entire progression through that. Same way, there's a famous Joe Pass trick, he's just going through the cycle of fourths with the same two voicings, or, going down a fifth, up a fourth, down a, which is the same, because intervals are reverted. Like now we've done C, D, G, C like this, or D, G, C like this. And up a fourth means down a fifth. It's the same thing. It always adds up to 9. Note that, jolt that down. The 9 is the crucial thing. So a minor sixth becomes a major third. 6 plus 3 is 9, and major becomes minor, etc. So that's a story for intervals 102 or 103. But here's, the 2-5-1 was an example. I just want to take a moment to talk about all the things you are. That's what I noted here. I'm looking at my other screen, and all the things you are, if you get rid of everything and just look at the roots. So F minor 7, B flat minor 7, E flat 7, A flat major 7, D flat 7. So let's just look at the roots. F, B, E, A, D flat. Then goes up a half step, D, G, C. This is a 2-5-1 in C major. So essentially it's going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. No. Sorry, I'm full of it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's going through 5 different chords in a perfect diatonic cycle of fourths in the key of A flat major. Then it's doing a 2-5-1 in the key of C major. So essentially the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You tell someone one information, which is cycle of fourths, and you've given them 8 chords, right? I know there's more, like this is an oversimplification, there's more to it than that, but in essence, that's a great way to remember chord progressions. Now, not all songs will follow the same patterns through all the chords, but big chunks of tunes do that. Like a lot of tunes do that because they're pleasing, and going to the next chord in the same pattern that was previously heard is really pleasant to the ear. It really feels nice, like it gives us a sense of security because there's no surprise. Well, you know I Will Survive. That's also a sequence. And there's more than all classical music, all pop music. I love I Will Survive or Autumn Leaves because they're literally just a cycle in the key. So that's all I have for this. And now let's go to the next section where we'll describe how to imply chords with a simple interval. All right, in section 6 of this video, in the 6th part, I want to take a moment to go deeper for advanced players to use a simple interval or set of simple intervals to imply entire chords and chord progressions. And if you've been following jazzguitarlessons.net, or if you know your shell voicings and stuff, you know I'm a big fan of taking you guys that come from rock and blues background and going, all right, you have all these bars, get rid of the bars, and let's start with a B flat 7 chord and go, all right, root, 7th and 3rd. And essentially, after not too long of studying with me, you're going to let go of the root and go, okay, I have these two notes, and I can play an entire blues progression like this, like, of course, to an E flat and back up, but I can play it without the root, and then I can start to add extensions. So, and then you become a really effective comper because you have a dynamic system of harmony. You're not bound to chord shapes, you're actually comping by knowing what is included within the chord and then playing around with it and listening to the soloist. All right, so one thing that this brings is playing 3rd and 7ths. I always start with have your root on the 5th or 6th string, the 2 bottom ones, and it makes your 3rd and 7ths happen on the middle strings, so strings D and G. So I could take another example. I will take all the things you are. It's not on the blog, but I'll just take it anyway. So this is an F minor 7. So you na da 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 da. So you can really go through songs and going down the cycle like this, and when you run out of frets, you go up. And you keep playing your 3rd and 7ths and 3rd and 7ths, and if the progression is kind to you and it's a good one and it's in a cycle, it will just keep descending. It's just a side bonus, a side benefit. Now, what I prepared for this lesson is slightly different. It gives you an idea of how to do this Lenny Bro style, and it's not something I'm super familiar with or that I used a lot, but it can be super useful because we'll take a 4th. And the example on the blog is a 2-5-1 in the key of F major. So the chords are G minor 7 to C7 to F major 7. And the 4th we will use will strictly describe the 3rd and 7ths, but we will do them one string lower. So this is your first voicing. The F note is the 7th of G minor 7. Same as you're here, and you look at these two notes. So you play this here. F note is 7th, B flat note is 3rd, so 7, 3. Then for the C chord, all that happens, you move this note down. That's a 3rd of C7, and that's a flat 7 of C7. And then this note goes down. And this is the 7th of F major and the 3rd of F major, right? E and A. So that's really the interesting part. You do this, 1, 2, 3, 4. And you don't have to go. You don't have to have your full grips for this to sound like comping, like you're comping on something. Let me run it a few times to convince you that it's possible to make sense of this. And yeah, this is Lenny Bro, Bill Evans style type of comping, all right? So 2-5-1 in the key of F major, I'll add rhythms, I'll fool around a little to give you an idea how powerful this concept is. A 1, 2, 3, 4. So not much melodic information, not much chord information, but that is a fourth. This is a augmented fourth, and this is a fourth again. So essentially, if you put your mind to it, you could comp for entire chord sequences, which I highly encourage you to do. Like I've described on the middle strings, you can replicate this on the lower strings. Just be careful when you reach the end of the fretboard, it gets muddy. And you can really comp on standards this way. So this is something I would do if I were you. Just pause the video now, grab a blues or grab a standard, and see if you can make sense of these shapes that are fourths that don't have the root in it, and if you can run your entire progression. Alright, and for dessert in this video, this is the moment everyone's been waiting for. In the blog, there's a PDF and we have a full chord melody arrangement that's very, very minimalist in terms of chords, and it's using that fourths concept that I talked about. We have our third and sevenths of every chord written in whole notes for every bar, and there's the melody on top. So that's a little bit of a relief for you guys if you're struggling with chord melodies and you think like, oh, I have this cumbersome voicing, I'm trying to get the melody on top, how do I do it? I don't know a chord shape that has that melody on top. So this is an example to show you less is more, and actually I'm going to perform this not too fast because I don't want to, there's no safety net, I'm not doing any second takes, but I wanted to show you that you can vary the rhythms. You could place the chord a little anticipated, a little before they happen, a little after, in between. And for you guys that are like, oh, I'm not a finger stylist, I don't like using my fingers, I'm going to go ahead and do that mostly with my pick. So I'll pick the first note, which is, it's an A, so, and I'll actually go and strum. Actually, let me do this. I shouldn't do this while I'm shooting, but let me show you my fingers a little more here. So I'm going to strike the third and seventh, so like a cowboy, actually. And you'll see it's pretty effective. And I won't do it in the video now, but I would encourage you to look at this sheet and take out the melody. Just look at the fourths we're using at the bottom, put a backing track on, and do comping on Beautiful Love. It's a great standard. Like, it's a pretty easy one too. It's in D minor, F major. And just see if you can make sense of the voicings, because this is like a thorough example. All right, without further ado, getting the nerves on, and here we go. Not too fast. It's a wrap for your intervals lesson. Thank you for watching. If you're just getting started with intervals and you watch all of this, naturally, I encourage you to look at intervals every day, whether it be through, some of the licks you're working on, or standards or chord progressions that you start to say, oh, that's a minor six, that's this, that's that, and that you spend a little bit of time, at least ear training, to be able to recognize intervals by ear, which I've done, with the tunes earlier. So you really have to make up your own list of tunes for ascending intervals, descending intervals. Let your friends, quiz you on certain intervals, like, play something on piano and go, what is this? Is this a minor sixth or a major sixth? And make sure you decipher from the context. As an advanced player, what I've just performed for you, the Beautiful Love arrangement, see if you can use that concept in comping. See if you can let yourself go and use, the fourths and solo a little bit on top. Now you're really getting in Lenny Bro territory, and try to use intervals in creative ways and understand music in ways that make sense for you, but also understand that it's not by accident that we're working on certain things through cycle of fourths, and it's not by accident that we decided we have major and minor thirds, but we have perfect and diminished fourths and not major fourths. There's a whole bunch of things in the background of this that is assumed that you should become slowly familiar with. So just spend a little bit of time. Naturally, go and navigate to the blog, download the sheet music, and feel free to ask me questions here on comment through this video or on the blog post itself. And naturally, please share this video with anyone you think might like it or might be helpful. Jazz players or not, everyone that plays music should be familiar with intervals. And I will see you soon on the website, jazzguitarlessons.net. Improve your jazz guitar playing with a real teacher. And please subscribe to this YouTube channel to make sure you don't miss any of the updates. I'll see you soon. Take care.